I think you're going to enjoy the time that we're going to have together with Matthew Porter. Um, I should just tell you, I think I've known Matthew for, it has to be over 10 years that I've known you. And one of my favorite Matthew Porter stories actually has to do with a birthday. I have this tendency to run in mileage distance of on my birthday. Um, so it's my birthday run, and sometimes I'll run down the Katy Trail, and so it happens to snake past an area that, well, it snakes past where you live, Matthew, and so he's joined me on at least one occasion, if not a couple, or threatened to join me on more than one. And there was one particular birthday where you came running down, and I think we were hobbling along at that point at like a 10-minute mile pace, and it was just killing Matthew to run that slow, just this turtle pace. And so I got very familiar with the back of Matthew Porter's head, and was able to monitor his stride from a good distance away as he took my brother way out ahead of everyone else. Subsequently, my brother had to like drop out of the birthday run because of your pace setting. So I think he probably still has a resentment. I'm not sure.
Absolutely does.
We could check in on that. But I think that one of the reasons I wanted to have this time with you, and I wanted to share this with a group of people who'd be interested in it, is that, I wanted people to hear from you as someone who, you typically have this point of view about the world and about business and about how it knits into your life that is usually 90 degrees from the way that most people are thinking, at least. And you will hold to your convictions and to your principles in a way that I think is inspiring to people, even when there's no way to know what's going to happen next. And you've had to navigate that kind of thing over and over again in your life. So I think that people could benefit from hearing what you have to say, not just about your past, but about how you're looking forward, and going from here. So
Yep.
thanks for joining us this morning, Matthew.
A pleasure. I just wanted to hopefully help somebody, if not more than one person.
Right on. Well, let's go back, just to establish kind of who you are for folks who might not know you. Let's take it from your entrepreneurial journey. You had a vision for a company, and you started Contigix. Let's walk through the Contigix story. How did you get started? What was it like for you?
Well, it started with my business partner, Craig McElroy, who kind of sits behind the scenes, but deserves a lot of the credit as well. We both started as software developers at Worldwide Technology. It's amazing that we're friends, even before we started the company, because we had a bunch of contentious moments. And I think it was just that same level of intensity for the technology, same level of intensity for our ideas. And we just got really, really both passionate about those. I mean, at one point, Craig probably could have had me fired from Worldwide because I threw a book at him, and he loves to remind people about that. I like to remind people that I did not throw a binder at him. I threw it flat at him. It's a different perspective. Craig and I worked at Worldwide.
It's an intense workplace. That's an intense workplace. Yeah.
It is, and it's an intense relationship with two intense people.
Yeah.
So I left. I went to another company that didn't do well. I then went to demand management, and Craig and I had always had a deep friendship. We still do to this day. It's actually one of my proudest things about Contigix, is that we set out early on and said, once this impacts our friendship, we're out, we're done. And we never got to that point. And we're still friends today. I mean, we had coffee a couple weeks ago, right before the quarantine kind of started, just to catch up. And, probably could have spent 3 hours together just really shooting the shit. And that's one of my most proudest things about the journey. Demand management was acquired about 2 years after I brought Craig on board. We had kind of started Contigix, or really what was the foundation of Contigix, which was we were doing software development, we were doing online backups, and we were doing this cloudy hosting thing.
About what year was this?
Because
when did you start?
That's 2003, 2004. We'd started way back then, and people thought we were insane. because
Mm-hmm.
back then everybody built server rooms and they liked air conditionings and power, and internet access was brought into companies mostly for serving websites and email, not for people sitting at their desk to actually get work done, such as a Zoom call or such as being on Salesforce. It just wasn't the world that we live in today. And it's hard to imagine that, but it truly was. So we started it really truly about a year before demand management was acquired. And on October 1st, my daughter is 16. So this was, now 16, 17 years ago on October 1st, when I had a little one at the house, and Craig had a daughter that is 2 weeks older than my oldest. Craig and everybody on my team was laid off, except for me and one other person.
Wow.
We were acquired by a competitor. And Craig said, hey, we got a couple customers. We probably had $30,000 in annualized revenue. And Craig's like, I'm going to go down to the data center and start getting stuff done that we've been saying we're going to get done on the weekends, and we just never get done. 3 months later, as my middle kid was born, I joined the company. 2 weeks before he was born. So I joined January 13th of 2005. So nothing like having a 1-year-old, a kid on the way, and telling your wife that we're going to completely drop our annual income by, 6 figures.
Right. A significant amount. Right. That had to be an easy conversation. Right.
It was actually a hard conversation, but it was hard receiving the conversation. So my wife deserves credit for this, probably more than anybody else on my decision. She came to me in December of 2004 and just said, what is going on? And my statement was, I think I really want to do this. It's going to be really, really hard. And her words to me at that time are things that get, are now burrowed down into me and will stay with me forever. And we're sitting in our bedroom. She's tired. She wants to go to bed. She's 8 months pregnant. And she says, we have a daughter in the other room. We have a son on the way. You don't get to tell them to follow their dreams if you don't follow yours. It just makes you a hypocrite or a liar.
Wow.
So go figure this out. Don't put our family at jeopardy. And I'm really tired, so I'm going to sleep. And that was effectively the end of the conversation. I mean, she deserves a lot of credit for that.
Wow.
And there were times where, we skirted that line of putting our family at risk. I've told the story before. There's a very awkward situation of getting down to $37 in your checking account, parking halfway between the bank and the grocery store to go take a home equity loan from the bank so you can walk past your car to then walk into the grocery store and buy groceries for your family of 5. And yet that's where we were at one moment.
Wow. But you were very successful in building that company. You guys.
We were successful. It's been 3.5 years since we did our major transaction with private equity. I still sit on the board. We had a phenomenal result for a very small investment. We had a phenomenal result regardless. It's still hard to utter those words that we were successful. It feels a little narcissistic. Not uttering those words feels like I'm not honoring the work that the people on that team did. Though that's the balance I keep trying to feel with this.
Right. And just to help people to get an idea of the scope of it, how big did you guys grow? What were some of the facts and figures for you in that sale?
So we're still under confidentiality on the amount. I will tell you that we had a double-digit multiple on our EBITDA. We had effectively completed 3 transactions before we sold, which took the company from an organic size of 60, 70 to over 350. Some of the things that came out publicly afterwards, which is perfectly great and and all good of, hey, Contigix, sold to private equity, and a week and a half later they bought this company, and a week after that they bought this other company, and a week after that they bought this other company. For those of you that have done transactions or been part of transactions, they don't get done in a week and a half.
Mm-hmm.
They take a lot of time, which is really a nice way of me saying that lawyers bill a lot to make sure that the transaction goes well, but that takes time.
Yeah, right. Right. I mean, and so if you back up to even when you owned Contigix, there were parallel journeys that your life took as you were building that company, and one of them had to do with your physical fitness. Because the first time I interviewed you, I think it was previous to 2010, and you were one. I don't want to be so brutal to say this, but you were one shape of Matthew Porter, and then the next time I interviewed you, you were a different shape. Like what happened while you were building Contigix?
So it's a great day to ask this question, because the actual start of that journey is 10 years ago today. It's exactly 10 years ago today. And it started with my wife telling the story of our wedding weekend, where she went home and stayed with her mom and dad. She tells the story to our 6-year-old daughter, who's now 16. And that night I go to tuck Avery, our daughter, in, and she asks, "Can I come home and stay with you guys like mom did?" She's 6 years old. "Of course, sweetie, you can. We're your family. We're always going to be here for you." Get the big hug, the big kiss. "Thank you, Dad, so much. I love you. I love you. I love you." And our family word of Mostis had already been established at this time. Mostis. I tuck her in, and this little girl just pops up out of the bed just as I'm about ready to sit up, and she pokes me in the stomach, and she goes, "You have a lot of squishy. I don't know if you're going to make it." And now I'm wanting to tuck her in very aggressively and tell her to go to sleep. I come downstairs, see my wife, and I'm like, "You're not going to believe what your daughter just said."
You're like insulted. Your feelings are all hurt, right? Sure.
Yeah. I mean, she wasn't lying. Kids are amazing at their honesty and their brutality. And I texted a buddy who was in my EO forum. For those of you that know what forum is, it's a small group of 8 to 10 people that get together every month, and these people become your brothers and sisters, and oftentimes for life, even outside the organization. And I texted him and said, "Hey, I'm going to go run a mile tomorrow." And this guy was an accomplished ultramarathoner. I barely knew how to spell the word or knew what it meant. And his reply back was, "No, you're not. Call me when you're done." Guy's name is Corky Miller. He used to own Gasalo here in St. Louis. Still one of my closest friends to this day, even as he's moved away. And I went out, and they made it 100, maybe 150 yards. And I called him and I said, "You're right, I didn't make it." He goes, "That's okay. Tomorrow we make it a little bit farther." And that was March 26, 2010. And that's what started the change. And it was about 2 years later that I was able to run my first ultra marathon at a 51 miles.
Right. Right. I mean, they think that's it's telling also of your personality. We've used the word intense, but a lot of people, if they were going to just embrace running as a way of life, would say, "Well, I'm going to run about 20 minutes 3 times a week, and that's how I embrace running." Whereas you're like, "No, 2 years later, if you fast forward 2 years, I completed a 51-mile race," which is not something that most people go from running 150 yards to over 50 miles. So what happened there? Why did you do that?
Because, well, there's actually 2 reasons on it. First one was that I found out I needed time to think, and I wasn't doing that as a leader. And being out in the middle of nowhere on trails, because I fell in love with trails, and having this amazing time to think was just incredible. I could digest problems, and I still think to this day that a lot of times people don't take enough time to think. Like, it's okay to say, "Hey, I hear you. You've presented something to me. You have clearly put a lot of time and energy and effort into this and thought about it. Would it be okay if I take a moment to think about it? To actually do that?
Mm-hmm.
It deserves it. Your work deserves it. So for me, that became important. And in the midst of this, on the whole strategic side of this, when we talk about our, compounded annual growth rate, we oftentimes leave out 09, 2010, and 2011 because we were growing so fast, it skews the numbers.
Really?
Like, it was well beyond what we were doing before and well beyond what we did afterwards. We were just growing so fast in the middle of that crisis time because a lot of stuff was going to outsourcing, and we were part of an outsourcing partner play for people. So I needed a lot more time to think. The second reason is that I kind of found myself out there somewhere in that trail, whether it was a Katy trail or Chubb or Lewis and Clark. I found something about me that was, I don't like to quit stuff. I just don't like to quit. There's probably one or two people on this webinar that know what happened in 2016 at Leadville. 79 miles on a torn hamstring.
Yeah, I've seen your video. It's brutalizing to watch because I can tell you're completely sideways and ambling along in Leadville, which is one of the most difficult courses to try to complete, and it's a 100-mile course, right?
Yep. So to me, it's about it. It was just one of these things. Now, Courtney, my wife, would tell you that was always in you. As long as I've known you, that's always been in you. So I'm not surprised to see this is what you took up. And I fell in love with it. I mean, let's be honest. I think human beings are, at our core nature, evolution works because we are addicts in one way or the other. We do things that feel really good. And if you can get past that 3 miles of physiology and all the problems that can occur in the first 3 miles of running, and you start getting that runner's high, you get addicted to it. I mean,
sure.
So.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, I appreciate that. Like, you're taking away from virtue and just making yourself a junkie. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Nice work.
Thanks.
So, but in addition, so another parallel path. So you have a company you're building. You embrace this ultra endurance lifestyle, and at the same time, I don't know the exact year, but somewhere in that timeline, you received some news that I think would shock a lot of people, and definitely change the course of their lives. Usually not for the better, it seems like. So when did you receive some news about your health as you started this training for an ultra lifestyle?
So as much as I remember the March 26th date, 2010, I remember exactly what happened 4.5 years later. And I'll give the punchline and then I'll back up a little bit on it because I think it's important to hear this. On September 26th of 2014, I walked into a doctor's office, and the doctor sat down with my wife and me and told me that, Mr. Porter, I have no idea how you walked into my door, and your chart and history must be wrong, or I'm reading it incorrectly, because I have no idea how you run long distances. You're being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And my report says counted 38 lesions on his brain and spine, and we stopped counting. So it's effectively, for me, unknown how many lesions are on my brain and spine. And I deal with multiple sclerosis on a daily basis, almost every day. To back up on this was not something that I expected, and my wife, being an adult nurse practitioner, was not something she expected. What actually happened is I had an MRI done for other reasons that proved to show nothing there. The doctor that ordered that MRI of just my upper spine, a regular MRI, no contrast injected in me, is a good friend. It's Dr. Matt Lytle over at Precision Health. And he called me on a Friday evening. And as much as he's a friend and actually a next door neighbor, and for those that know me, you know that I'm extremely literal. He lives the next door over. He called me on a Friday evening and he said he wanted to talk about my MRI. And I knew that it was bad because when Matt Lytle is in clinic, he's in clinic. When he's out of clinic, he's not in clinic. So there's no conversations about that. And I respect those boundaries in his life. And he said, there's signs of demyelinating disease. And I had no idea what that meant. My wife did. And as an adult nurse practitioner, she was the one who ordered the MRI for with and without contrast of my brain and spine, which meant she was the one who was going to get the result. And she called me up. She said, when you see the doctor on the 26th, you will be diagnosed with MS. We walked in that office together, and we walked out of that office together, both ways holding hands, just knowing that our family was going to be okay and we were going to be okay. It took me 3 years to actually come out and become public about it. So there was a group of people that held that in confidence for a long time. And it took about a year and a half for us to tell our kids, I don't think this is where you wanted me to go, but I'll just add it. Our kids are sequential in age. We didn't have a whole lot of money when we were starting Contigics. I gave you the time frames on it. Our kids are now 16, 15, and almost 14. We were at home a lot. I'm sure there will be a baby boom in 9 to 10 months from now with everybody at home. And we're Catholic, or at least we were for a short period of time, very Catholic. And with that, we wanted our kids to all be told at the same time. And we needed to practice out and rehearse how we were going to do that. I didn't want to put my daughter and my son in a situation where they had to hold something in confidence that the other or the others didn't know. So we waited till they were all the right age to hear it. And we told them. And 3 years, on the 3-year anniversary, I stepped out and became very public about it, because that news, as bad as that news was, doing research on the internet about MS and getting fouled around by retargeting and the advertising ecosystem with ads that were designed to generate fear and uncertainty and doubt, and therefore open up wallets, that was really hard. I got tired of seeing the father walk down the street on canes, and the mom laying in her bed after she just had a spinal tap. It was all negative. And so I became public on the 3-year anniversary, and I've become more public even since then.
Yeah, I've noticed, I know that one of the things that's really precious to you, because we both run the same trail, is actually out on Lewis and Clark. There's a pile of rocks out there, right? And people have written some messages on them. And I think that's actually where isn't that something like you first publicly came out on the trail, quote unquote, publicly?
I ran by this pile of rocks at the intersection where Lewis and Clark get down in kind of in a valley. And I don't know who started the rock pile collection. And in fact, actually last time I was out there 2 weeks ago, I actually dropped off a series of markers because I couldn't find any for other people. But one day, I think I'd ran there from the Katy Trail. So I'd done 6 miles and then ran that. So I'm probably 10, 11 miles, and maybe it was just mental exhaustion or emotional exhaustion. I wrote on a rock for some reason, I have MS, and I put my initials on it. And it was kind of the first time I'd actually publicly ever said it. Mm-hmm. And to me, so that rock pile is public and yet a public secret. So to me, that's something special. And I've taken my kids there now, and I wanted them to know and see that, so that, we have to express who we are. We can't hold ourselves in for the world just because the world may not like it or the world may judge it. So I wanted them to see that, and I stepped into that transition.
Right. So, a couple of things, the Q&A is open for those of you who are viewing. And I would love, now that you've heard the kind of person, the nature of human and the entrepreneur that Matthew is, I would love it if you guys ask some questions. We'll try to have some time toward the end so that you can get his take on what we're facing in this moment, because I think it's probably likely that you're already making some of those connections to the uncertainty we're facing right now. So with everything that's rolled out, with all of the uncertainty, the changes that keep coming our way, Matthew, what have you been doing? How have you helped your family, your colleagues, your coworkers take a look at this unknown that we're all dealing with?
If I may, if you'll indulge me, I'll start with a lesson I had to learn potentially the hard way, maybe two lessons. When I got diagnosed, a friend of mine who is an extremely close friend deals with a genetic disease. I won't go into detail because I haven't publicly said it's okay. I haven't talked to him about discussing the story. He was one of the people I reached out to. He was one of the people in the know when I got diagnosed. And despite our long friendship over decades, we really had never gone to dinner, just the two of us. And he called me and said, "Hey, let's grab dinner." And I think about this story right now because of the uncertainty moment. This is probably a week and a half after I got diagnosed. We sit down at dinner and he just starts laughing. And he says to me the words that I will not forget: "Congratulations. Your life isn't what you thought it was going to be. You're actually one of the lucky ones who know that. So you better go figure out what you want it to be. And it doesn't matter how you feel, and it doesn't matter what happened, because today is a blessing and it's a gift. And you better understand that." And we're talking about somebody who was not expected to make it, live long enough to see their 20s. And he's much older than that now, with a wife, family. And so for somebody who didn't think that he was going to be there at that moment, to tell me that it didn't matter, that the day was a blessing, is something that I've held forever, well, since that moment. And there are days that suck. I mean, Courtney will tell you in 16 months ago, 17 months ago, I had a 9-day period where I was in pain. And I don't like taking pain medicine. It just, it operates like a shotgun. Everything gets hit. Everything dulls. It's not a rifle. It's not a sniper rifle where it just takes the pain. So I don't take the pain medicine. 9 days, I said 9 days in pain for this. And with that, it just was difficult. I mean, the last 2 nights, I jumped up out of my bed, almost on the verge of tears, in so much pain that I couldn't stand the covers to touch me. I still got up. I still went to work. My friends that are from Clayco probably don't even know that time period existed, and I was working there at the time, because it was still a beautiful day, and I was going to maximize the hell out of it. So today, when I think about that, what am I doing with my team at Invisibly, with our team that works directly for us as employees, and with our partners, whether they're in Argentina or they're in India, we are still highly focused on what our vision, our mission, and our values are. I will say this: years and years and years ago, as I applied for a program, I wrote this long essay, and I'm going to say the title of it, and people are going to think that I'm being a jerk, and it's actually quite the opposite. I wrote this long essay about how my dad was a simpleton. And everybody thinks when I say that, they're like, "Gosh, you're being so mean to him." And it's not that. It's just that he got to the point where the things that mattered, mattered. The things that didn't matter, didn't matter. The things that he could take charge of mattered. That which he couldn't, didn't matter. Like, I don't think that's insulting. I think us making it so complex is actually the insult. We're not focused sometimes on what is the priority. So to me, that is the lesson that I took from him. His family mattered, period, full stop. That's it. So for us as an organization, what are we thinking about? We're thinking about our mission. We're thinking about our vision. We're thinking about our core values. We're making the decisions based upon those. We sit in our meetings on Tuesday as a senior leadership team. Tell me something that is going right with the world. I don't care if it's that yesterday I told them, I found this race sweatshirt that I never wear because I'm not actually wearing dress up clothes every day, and I find it very comfortable, but just some level of gratitude that you're expressing at this moment. We didn't change who we are. We didn't change what we're doing. We may change how we do it to some degree, but we're still focused on what's right.
Yeah. How do you, I mean, are those the kinds of questions that you think, this is a bit of a setup. Do you think that those are the kinds of questions that you're always asking, or do you think that it's in circumstances like these, times like these, when there is so much uncertainty, that those kinds of elements of vision, values, what are the priorities, those things actually become more visible?
My genuine belief is that the uncertainty was always there. We're just getting visibility into the uncertainty. That's it. I mean, so it's always been the same. I mean, my team is probably tired of me asking the questions of how does this apply to our values? Where is this aligned with our North Star? Okay, why are we doing it if it isn't? I mean, I feel like sometimes I'm actually not actually leading. I feel like I'm just repeating 17 phrases over and over again. But
Right. So,
yeah, I think what that does is give people permission to make decisions. I mean, your core values, your vision, your mission, all that stuff. I mean, they are there not just to guide the organization, not just to figure out that you get the right people, right people. And I by the way, I love the phrase right people, right seat on the bus, but it's a longer equation, in my opinion. It's right bus, right people, right seat, right time, right cost. That's the longer equation on that. But when you put those vision, mission, core values in, they're guardrails so that you know that you're hiring the right people, so that you don't actually have to be a micromanager over every tiny little decision. Because if you're micromanaging stuff, you are actually just doing nothing but being a damn bully. I mean, your statement is, hey, I know you spent 40, 50 hours working on this. Talk to me about it for 3 seconds, and I'm going to give you an opinion that will actually maybe contradict yours, but I'm so fucking smart. Sorry. So smart that
there's no fucking
I
swearing
figured
on
it
this.
out in 13 seconds. Yeah. I figured it out in 13 seconds. What you couldn't figure out in 50 hours, you needed 52. Like that, like, could you be more condescending to your teammate? I mean, could you? So to me, vision, mission, core values put those guardrails so that people can make decisions. And if they make decisions that are not what you thought, that are not aligned, then you come back and you take responsibility and say, okay, we clearly did not set expectations. We clearly did not talk about the vision, mission, core values in the right way. We meaning the leaders. Uncertainty, not uncertainty, present, not present, visible, not visible. It's still the same execution.
Really? So, I mean, it sounds like you're saying the posture of leadership that you take, in particular, was already factoring in the possibility of uncertainty and unknown before we understood what the implications of coronavirus would be. Does that sound right?
Yeah, and we look at it at what is the goal that we're trying to achieve. And I think people get confused on goals and tactics, at this time. So we still have our goals that we're going after, and our tactics may have to change accordingly. I mean, look, we've all had this tactic change in the last 2-3 weeks. I mean, hospitals, Jeremy, you and I were talking about this before, hospitals oftentimes were like, we don't do telemedicine. Why not? No real actually good answer. I mean, let me ask you, what was your goal? Your goal was to take care of the patient. Your goal wasn't to build a building. Your goal wasn't to actually spend all this time and energy as a patient driving somewhere. Your goal was to get help for your health. So when we get boiled down to what the goal is here for hospitals and doctors, all of a sudden telemedicine seems to make sense because we can still achieve the goal. And if you do need to come see us, then you come see us. But it's not defaulting to the tactic that we've always taken. So while I sound like it, potentially that it sounds like I'm saying keep on keeping on, it's only keeping on to where we're headed with the goal. And we might have to change tactics. And that's okay because the world changed, but it was always going to change.
Right. And it seems like you have some intimate understanding of that, likely because of the experiences you've had. How do you help people? We are getting some questions about, your reaction to your diagnosis. It didn't seem like you overreacted to that or anything. You were very methodical. You were thoughtful. Sounds like you and your wife already had a good understanding of even the vision for your family, such that you could respond in a thoughtful way to something that was unexpected, unknown. How do you compare or contrast that kind of response or that kind of leadership, I guess, in comparison to how you could see the collective responses that you've witnessed to the COVID-19 sort of outbreak?
So I'll talk a little bit, if it's okay, about the diagnosis and what the process was, and then bring that forward to the COVID-19 response. We did have 4 days to emotionally digest that, the official diagnosis. So I don't want to take anything away from that. I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound almost egotistical or braggadocious or maybe narcissistic. I never asked, why me? I just didn't think that was a fair question. I'm okay questioning why the world is the way it is. I'm okay asking, why would multiple sclerosis exist? I'm okay looking at what possibly could have caused it. Genetic lottery. I'll use lottery in the terms of the book we were all required to read in high school. I lived next to Coldwater Creek. Hell, I played in Coldwater Creek. 70s and 80s, people smoked a lot. We didn't know as much. Those are 3 potential causes. There could be just a few others. I can question that. I can question why MS exists in this world. I can question all those things. To me, it was never why me. It was why not me? What makes me so special that I deserve a life of no challenges and hardship? And I don't think anybody deserves that. I think that would not be a complete life. I mean, maybe that at the end of the day, that's actually truly the best story, or the best conclusion of something like the story of Genesis with Adam and Eve, that there should not be a life of no challenges and hardship. They are what define who we are and our characters. Now, in that office, my wife did ask, should he stop running these long distances? And the doctor's reply was absolutely not, as long as he can, for as far as he can, as hard as he can, which apparently you were the benefactor of as hard as he can on your birthday run.
That's right.
We have clearly different definitions of benefactor. But, she walked out of the office and she just looked at me and she smiled and she said, you always get what you want. And she was saying, because the doctor said, no, keep going. And so now I get to use, hey, listen, sweetie, I know you want me to be here to go to brunch with you and the kids, but I'm just trying to follow doctor's orders. I'm going to go for a 20-mile run. I'll see you in 3-4 hours.
Right.
So fast forward that to the COVID-19 coronavirus situation. And I see some parallels there. Maybe it's just trying to learn from my own experiences and repeat that. We can question how this came about, why this came about, and we can have these overreactions to it. What I get concerned about in this moment, especially if you are a leader, and whether it's you're a leader because you've got a little one sitting next to you in your home office right now, or you're a leader because you've got 250 people working for you, or you've got 2,000 people working for you, or 20,000 people working for you. I'm very concerned because it's real easy, and I wrote about this after a long time of thinking about it, about how we can oftentimes make pain contagious. And we can over-exaggerate the situation. We can blow up the situation. We can blow up our Facebook feed with all this crazy stuff that's going on. And yet here we are, still that crazy stuff going on, and you've done nothing with it. And that's a problem, in my opinion. You are wasting that blessing that my friend talked about of that day. You can still go do good in the world. A buddy of mine, we were talking and I shared with him one of my favorite quotes, and it just happened to be the day that was Mr. Rogers' birthday last week, and the quote is something along the lines of, when I was young and I would see scary stuff, Mr. Rogers' mom would always tell him, look for the people that are helping. There are always people helping. So we can still do great things right now. We can still do that without having to ask, why me? We can still ask questions. How did this come about? This sucks. I lost 50% of my revenue. Okay, I get it. But people are depending upon you to make the next step. And wallowing in the pain just makes more pain for everybody else, especially those that we lead.
So
to me, that's the bigger question.
How is it you take care of yourself? How is it that you contend with the pain and yet still lead and come from the place of, it sounds like, especially the way that you do, how is this aligned with our vision? How do we remain focused on what matters? What kind of practices do you employ, or what is your technique for understanding, hey, I'm in pain, but I'm not going to just broadcast just that pain or fear. And I actually know this from a running perspective as well. I know when I've been doing a workout and the person next to you says, oh, I feel terrible. And I'm like, hey, thanks a lot, buddy. Now everybody feels terrible, right? So what is it that you do? What is your practice for that? How do you contend with your emotional nature?
There's a couple of answers here. The first one is, at a personal level, I spend a lot of time doing things that are meaningful to me, that force me to think about the good in the world. I journal every morning. I journal every night. I get up early and do that. I'm a big believer in the Wim Hof method of breathing. I've done transcendental meditation since I was taught it as a teenager, which is a whole other crazy story that I finally got somebody to verify was actually true, because I thought I was making it up in my own head. It's about a Catholic priest teaching transcendental meditation inside of a church. And yet then I spend a lot of time on the gratitudes. So every single person that was in my cruise for Leadville in 2016 and 2018 will tell you, up until the last aid station in 2016, when I pulled out, I came into every aid station and I asked questions like, hey, how's the crew doing? How's everybody doing? Smiling. Thank you for being here. Now, whether that distance I had crossed it's 10 miles, there's one short distance at about 3.5 when you can meet up with crew. I came in every time and said, thank you. I mean, it's really hard to be pissed off in the world when you're having to express gratitude to somebody else.
Right.
It's just hard. because you're not expressing gratitude. You're just, you're just, transferring hatred. If you're doing it, you're transferring pain. But if you're genuinely sincere, so to me, that's a big part of it. Tell me the headlines. For those people that do EOS, your L10 meetings, your weekly L10 meetings, if your headlines aren't about gratitude, about something going on, then pause. I don't care about the 5-minute timer on the L10 headlines. Tell me something good that's going on in the world, because it can't be all bad.
Right.
I also try to push to my team that we, and with my kids, there is a difference between having control, where you can control everything, and actually being responsible for what you're doing, being in charge of how you respond to it. So to me, I'm okay saying this sucks. This isn't what we thought it was going to be. Data point acknowledged. Now what are we going to do? Where are we going to focus on? Our meeting yesterday, one of the things we talked about is, and said the invisibly senior leadership team is, okay, what's changed in the world? Tell me what's changed. Now, I don't want to take advantage of it. Feels like you're doing something dirty, but how do we actually take advantage of that? So we're in the world of advertising. What sucks? There's no ads going on for sports right now on TV. I mean, as much as ESPN is playing the Ocho, which is just outstanding. I mean, I love that ESPN's now gone to obscure sports quarterly. That budget just got shifted to digital. So how do we take advantage of that? Not to just maximize our revenue or maximize profit, but how do we actually deliver value in the world that's changed? Like, that's a positive way to look at this. I mean, there is no normal. Normal is being reestablished every moment, every day. I mean, this sounds silly, but I still look at my diagnosis of MS as both a challenge and a blessing. I have met a ton of people. I think I've helped a couple people with their diagnosis. Father of a teenager who got diagnosed. I've had that blessing. So what are the blessings that we're going to get from this? And we should be asking ourselves that question. We can't just say it's all gone to hell.
What are some of the things that you think will come from this? That's a question that some people are throwing both in the Q&A and in the chat. What do you think some of the long-term implications are of at least a larger number of people contending with what they feel is uncertain and unsafe? What do you think?
So to put some background on this so everybody understands this, in my perspective, I am one of the vulnerable. I have no immune system. So you all are staying home with your healthy immune systems for me. It's not just grandma and grandpa. It's not just so we don't get people in a assisted living facility put at risk, where I think Seattle was at 11% for those facilities that got infected. You all are staying home for people like me. So how can there not be a world of greater kindness when 97% of the population is making a decision for the other 3%? Perhaps we will be a little bit kinder when this is done. Perhaps we will reevaluate things like, hey, I know we've never had a work from home policy, but the world changed. That's at a tactical level. I see that as some of the outcomes, and everything in between on there. I mean, I also think there's going to be a huge baby boom in 10, 11 months. So if any entrepreneurs are out there, I would probably take advantage of that, that want to go do something in that. There's a great entrepreneur in St. Louis, and she's designed a brand new breast pump machine that is silent, that a woman can actually use without actually having to haul all this crap around, which I did not understand what big of a pain in the ass process it is. It makes me appreciate those women that do it even more. I mean, I could see her doing extremely well in this situation, but she's solving a new problem. So she's solving a new problem, well, an old problem, but she's going to have a big boom in the market.
One question that came through had to do with, how do you walk the line between safety and precaution at all costs? Because and this question came from Elliot Frick, actually, at Bigwidesky. So what are the costs sometimes of precaution, and how have you been able to navigate that line between let's be safe and let's implement precaution at all costs? So when it came to even your running or not running, your health, everything.
So I think folks that have been on my crew will tell you that that I have a wavering definition of that. I don't think it was healthy to pull into aid station, the first aid station at mile 12.5 and say, I think my right leg is messed up. In all fairness, the guy I texted in the story of, what happened 10 years ago, who said, tomorrow you run a little bit farther, said, it'll be fine. Just throw some dirt on it. So he's an accomplice in that. 79 miles later, I was completely hunched over, and one of my other crew members, who's, strong, huge guy, had to carry me. So let's waver that around onto the side because I'd gone 30 hours without sleeping. I think this is the hardest thing for anybody as a leader. You have to, at some point, be the one that makes the decision. I am notorious for, if the deadline is noon to make a decision, I'm going to run right up to 11:59. I will take in all the information, all the data I can up until that moment. And then at that point, I make the decision. And here's the critical thing I think about decisions in leadership. Once the decision is made, and whether it's made by the CEO, founder, chairman, whoever it is, the team that has to execute that decision directly needs to do so with full conviction, even if they lost the battle. And it doesn't matter if you're the CEO. It doesn't matter if you're the founder. If you lost the battle and the decision was made, there is no wavering on it. We were really bad at this in the early days of Contigix, and it caused a lot of problems. We were really, really bad at this. I didn't spend enough time focusing on my talent, the people there, ensuring that they were growing at the speed of the company or even faster. So I made some really bad people decisions early on. One of them was not coaching and mentoring people to the point that once we make a decision, we make the decision. Our team would sit there and practice this. Didn't matter if you won, you lost, whatever. What are you going to do when somebody comes up and asks you, hey, Matthew, I thought you wanted to do A, B, and C, and now we're doing X, Y, Z. Instead, we're doing the exact opposite. We all practice this. We have a plan. We're going to successfully execute on the plan. If we get new data that becomes information, we'll analyze it, and we may reevaluate the plan. Until such time, we're going to successfully execute the plan. That it's one thing to how do you make the decision on the risk? How do you take the appropriate precautions? It's another thing that once that decision is made, that you move forward. And you is in the plural sense, you as the team move forward. And you might get more data and turn it into information and analyze it and reevaluate the decision. Until then, successfully move forward. I have this decision in front of me every 6 months when I go to the doctor's office. I've been on the same medicine for 5.5 years now. For those of you that understand how MS works, I reached 5 years of a clean MRI, meaning no changes in my MRI last year. My actuary tables improved by 50%. They're 50% better than a person diagnosed with MS today. If you can make it 5 years with no changes in your MRI, your life expectancy only drops between 5 and 7 years, and your health span only drops between 5 and 7, rather than 10 to 15 and 10 to 15. Every time I go to the doctor, hey, you're on this medicine. There's a medicine that was approved. It's every 6 months. Do you want to do that instead? And I went there and read all the FDA studies on it. I practically have a, street level degree in pharmacology now. Probably should rephrase those words. It
Yeah,
makes me
it's a
sound like a drug
Breaking
dealer.
Bad
Yeah.
sort of situation in your basement, right?
Yeah. Now I'm off track, but irrespective, I look at that and say, okay, I know how this is working for me. I know what the warning signs are if I'm going to go off the road here, if there's a bridge ahead, if there's a cliff ahead. What don't I know about the other side? And I have to make this decision every 6 months. And it's risky, but I actually understand both levels of that. And I spend a lot of time educating myself on that. And I've been blessed and invisibly. I have a team, guys like our CTO and guys like our senior vice president that have actually spent a lot of time with me early on to educate me on that industry. But then that allows me to make decisions and be part of that decision-making team. And yet once it's made, we're going to successfully execute the plan, win or lose. I also, as CEO, have CEO privilege, and at Contigix, I had CEO and founder privilege. I only called it twice.
Right. So we've only got a couple minutes left, and I think we got through a good amount of the questions. I think there's a lot of particulars that people probably have, because a thing that's powerful about your story is that you do constantly, it seems to me, redound to things that a lot of people, I think, would be abstracted things, like your vision, your values, what matters to you, your priorities. I think, just really quick, what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? And then how can people learn more about you or learn more about Invisibly? And then we'll wrap.
We did talk about it here. It's probably worth noting that it's a very intense home I live in, at my doing and my wife's doing as well. We start there at the core. I had a mentor many years ago who said to me, hey, talk to me about what your family, this is a business mentor, talk to me about what your family's values are and your family mission statement. And I looked at him like he was drunk. And his words were, when I told him, hey, we don't actually have those, he said, okay, so let me just understand this right. You're going to do this job for 15 years, 20 years, 60, maybe 80 hours a week. And you're going to have a vision, a mission, a core values, and a strategic plan. And your family, which is forever, all hours of the week, we're just going to wing it. Okay, that logically makes sense. And hopefully Zoom can convey the sincere level of sarcasm that was in my voice, because I'm only downplaying his.
Right.
So our family,
not the transcript version of this. Right.
Our family actually has those things defined. Our family has a mission statement defined. It sits above our bed in our bedroom. And we make all those decisions based upon that. And that family mission statement says, we have a debt to those who came before us and an obligation to those who come after us. We will maximize our life with heart integrity and grit. We do all of this together because we are stronger together. Mostest. And that word mostest is how we live our life, to the max, to the extreme. And it started from our daughter, the same 6-year-old girl who told me I was squishy, who saved the quality of my life. It started with her. I love you more, I love you the most, I love you what's beyond that, mostest. And it means so much that my wife and I, on our anniversary a couple years ago, went and got tattoos of mostest. So I'm a complete geek. Mine's in binary. It's on my upper back. And also means I don't have a word that looks very close to moistest on my back. So my wife is on her wrist.
Nice design choice. Yeah.
Thanks. We make our decisions based upon that mission statement. We make those decisions, whether they are personal, whether they are family, whether they are business. I mean, I joined invisibly because of the chance to lead a culture. I joined invisibly because part of what we're trying to do is save online journalism, which I firmly believe is one of our safeguards in a democracy, if not the fourth branch of government in many, many ways. So that's why I did this. And at the heart of what we're trying to do at Invisibly, you're more than welcome to read about it at invisibly.com, is we're trying to save user control and privacy while getting online journalism paid what they should be. So that pumping out, those crappy articles. Jeremy walked in the kitchen. You'll never guess what he found. Oh God, I must know what Jeremy found in the kitchen. Click. Somebody was making a steak. That article should not earn as much money as, here's what's happened in the COVID since it was discovered in China. How do we prevent that going forward? Like, those shouldn't make the same amount of money.
I don't know. I happen to live with someone who's a really good cook, so you might be interested to read about it. But I think that what I hope a lot of folks got out of this conversation is that while those notions of vision, values, your intention in the world, I think those things for a lot of folks on a day-to-day basis, when we're not conscious of the fact that we're walking through the unknown all the time, that actually the future's always been uncertain. Those things seem like navel gazing, or like things that feel too abstracted to be actionable. And what I hope that a lot of folks got from this is, Matthew, you're an example of someone who makes those things actionable. You make them into behaviors that are observable. And anybody, the reason I wanted to entreat people to follow you on LinkedIn or on your, if you're home, is it Porterhome?
Porterhome.com.
Your thoughts, you can see what it looks like when someone actually is actionable in their mission and their vision and their values and what they want to create in the world, and remain steadfast to it, as you said, with decisions in the face of uncertainty. There are things over which we can exert some degree of agency, and those things have to do with our vision and our values. So
absolutely.
So I think you're just a great example of it. I'm grateful for your friendship. I'm grateful for this time that we got to spend together. And we are going to publish this, and everybody who attended, you'll get a version of it. And if you have some follow-on questions, I will see about trying to get Matthew available to answer any of them for you. And so you can park some of those in the response when I send it out to everybody. But I appreciate everybody joining us. And hanging in there through the webinar and asking questions. And so you'll see a response from us shortly.
Great. Jeremy, thanks for doing this. I mean, this is a great example of trying to put something positive in the world. So, or at least trying to. So I hope your other guests, I think you'll do more, and hope your other guests have some good stuff.
I mean, we totally just bombed it with this one, but hopefully the future ones are great.
Yeah. Nice. This is the first you practice, then you perfect, and now then you'll soon perform.
That's right. That's right. Well, are you going to hit the trail anytime soon?
Yeah. So for those that don't know, I had been running for about 3 weeks on a torn right meniscus, and I put down probably close to 145, 150 miles over 3 weeks on it. I had PRP and stem cell injections done about almost 2 weeks ago. So I'm back. I'm doing about 4 to 5 miles a day, about 3 to 4 days a week. So I'm going back out to Leadville. So we're going to raise, I hope, between $75,000 and $100,000 for MS research. If you enjoyed this, I'll eventually have a link up to pledge. If you enjoyed this, pledge a tiny amount per mile. If you thought I was completely full of shit and you hate me, I really encourage you to pledge 5 to 10 times as much just to see me suffer. Because if you didn't learn anything, I will suffer through torn hamstrings to get stuff done. So
that's right. Matthew, thank you.
Thanks, brother.
Take care.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everybody.